St. Charles Patriot Radio with Missouri State Representative Richard West and former Francis Howell School Board member Jane Puszkar.
Welcome to St. Charles Patriot Radio on this wonderful Sunday. Richard is here joining me. We have a great lineup for you today. We're going to have Denise Childress, candidate for circuit judge. We're really excited about. And just want to give a shout out to some of the people that attended the mouse races on Friday night. Thank you, Bob Eno, for emceeing. Thank you for everybody that attended. We had a really great turnout and raised some really good cash for our candidates, Annette Seavey and Judy Gambino.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you guys had a great turnout. It's been an interesting political season in St. Charles County. As you know, we're going to be electing a county executive.
Yes,
there's been a whole bunch of hubbub about that, and we actually even had a live debate on this radio station. And then there's been some other radio stations, and just a lot of talk going around. So in this fun political season, I just ask that the people of St. Charles County keep listening and keep forming your opinions and question your candidates. I mean, they're all have their doors open.
And I looked at that debate as more of a get to know the candidate as opposed to winners or losers. And people always want to tag a winner and a loser.
Right.
And I don't get that. You're still at the point where you're trying to learn about these people.
Yeah, I didn't see a winner or a loser in that. And I know there's differing opinions on the station as well. I didn't see it as a winner loser take all or lose all. What I saw it was there were a lot of things talked about in that debate that affect St. Charles County, and I think St. Charles Countyans really need to know where the candidates stand on those issues.
You know, Richard, there was a little bit of drama that happened too. There was an interruption by a certain known person, and I think that's really unfortunate that kind of behavior enters into a solid debate. I just didn't care for that.
Well, Arnie's been on our radio show before when Nick and I mean, I don't mind saying his name, and I'm not advocating for him or advocating against him. Arnie is, like I said, he's been on our radio show, and I like Arnie for some reasons, and some reasons I dislike Arnie. Arnie is, very informative, because he hits all the meetings and everything else, but he's also a disruptor. So
he does his homework before he goes to those meetings. I will give him that. I've known Arnie a long time, and I admire the courage that he exhibits, standing up in front of all those people and exposing things like he does. I just don't always agree with everybody on everything, as you well know.
Well, I don't agree with the way he does it sometimes either. But that's enough about Arnie. Let's talk about St. Charles a little bit. As we get deeper into the political season, we have a lot of candidates, both in the primaries and then in the generals, and we're going to try to bring more on here. I think today, like you said, we're going to have Denise Childress on. She's a current sitting judge, and then later on in the session, we're going to have Tanya Mum, I believe it is. She is also running for that same position, so we're going to have both of them on here. We're going to allow them to give us a little bit of background on who they are.
And you know what we're not going to have? The school board election.
Well, that's a good thing. But, in the coming years, we will.
That's true.
So we're looking forward to that. But so talking about school boards, a great segue here, Jane. Look, was a couple weeks ago, I think the state auditor came out with an audit on the Francis Howell School Board. And a lot of it had to deal with the hiring and moving on of a superintendent. You were on the board at the time.
I was.
So I guess I just have a question. How do you feel about the auditor's report? And just give us a little background on that.
Well, what's interesting, Richard, is that it was released while I was still on the board, but was not released to the public until, about a week or two ago.
Yeah.
And the way that I feel about what the auditor came out to say is that I agree with it. The process was rushed. I don't know if you know this, Richard, but I was the only one on the board that voted against hiring him. I did feel that the process was rushed. Nobody else did, but I did. And then there was another thing that I said, and that was that, there was a 3-year contract. Well, not knowing this person or their background for sure. Yeah, they said they did a background check, but I can go into that later. But what they wanted us to do was make a decision on hiring somebody that I don't think we really knew. And so my comment was, why not give him a 1-year contract, which lessens your liability? And it really would have. But they went ahead and approved, I didn't vote for it either, the 3-year contract. And so after we hired the person, the search firm did the background check. And
after you hired the person?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh.
After we hired the person, we realized, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear, the shortcomings in the background check. The background check was done by the search firm. The search firm basically looked at social media.
Okay.
There wasn't what I would consider a true background check. So when that background check failed because there were other things that the auditor said we could come out and sue him, discharge him for cause, we chose not to do that. The reason was the liability that was hanging over our heads for a 3-year contract. If that would have gone to trial, you never know how trials are going to turn out. Hopefully it would have been solved in mediation. But the fact of the matter is, the school district or the board did not do their due diligence in all cases. I will say that after we found out certain things, or he agreed not to even start, then it became apparent that some guardrails needed to be put into place. And so what the board did do after that was change the contracts so that in the contract it stated much more clearly, if something like this ever happens again, you're going to have to pay back the money and we'll go from there. But by then it was already too late.
Well, as somebody who part of the last 8 years of my job was spent doing background investigations, and that's what it was an investigation for prospective police officers for my police department. Most folks don't know this, but I would literally go out and speak to family members. I would go out and speak to, and I know differing hiring practices for different jobs, but I consider a school superintendent to be along the level of a background investigation that would be pretty close to that of a police officer.
Yes, and did you know that the superintendent makes more than the governor of Missouri?
Oh yeah.
So there should have been.
That's a whole other issue.
But don't let Mike Kehoe know that. So yes, it just wasn't there.
I'm baffled. So maybe you can explain to me. I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe you can explain to me. I guess school districts hire a company to do the background investigation.
Typically, yeah.
Or is it a background search or an investigation? I mean, what do they do?
Well, what do? They look for candidates throughout the country that have the qualifications that you are looking for. We had an internal candidate, and I was fully on board with that internal candidate. But they decided to hire the search firm anyway and said, well, even if you have an internal candidate, then we'll check out that internal candidate, which will show that the process works. Well, yeah, that's fine, except that's like a $40,000 tab to find out you have an internal candidate. Of course, I'm called Mrs. No sometimes, but I said no to that too. But
well, no, I understand. I mean, I guess where I said that's fine is in the fact that your internal candidate should be fully vetted. I mean, they're already working for you.
Right, 20-something years. Yeah. Who you got.
They should be fully vetted as anybody else would be. And so the law enforcement side of me kicks in. I'm more interested in the background research of what somebody does to hire somebody like that. I mean, just a look at social media that might be one source of it. But I mean, like I said, I would go and knock on wives or talk to brothers and sisters, neighbors. And you sign a release in the beginning saying, hey.
Right. You sign a release that says everything you say is true.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't believe everything was true. That's a whole nother, without going into particulars.
And I'm not a big fan of NDAs and super secret.
My stars.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing how we as a government sign NDAs and then do all this stuff and then spring it on the people, say, here's what we decided for you.
But we're not going to tell you why.
Oh, we're not going to tell you why. We're not going to tell you how.
Because we might get sued.
Yeah. So, well, enough about that. I'm glad to hear that you were no vote on it.
Thank you. Hey, and I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Well, it's a fair one.
Okay.
Richard, I've been listening to these radio ads. We are in election season, I'm concerned about Amendment 4. I'm hearing some opposing stories about how Amendment 4 is going to limit what the legislature can get through, meaning that there's a 5% contingent or 5% of the population in a county that can stop a ballot measure, an amendment, or tell me more. What are your thoughts?
So let's look at this first of all on what it is actually doing. Amendment 4 is protecting our state's constitution.
Okay.
That's what you should think of first. It does nothing with our process to amend our state statutes.
Okay.
Two sides. You have a state constitution and you have our state statutes. Our state constitution kind of governs how the state is supposed to run. It's a sacred document, just like our United States Constitution. Mm-hmm. Then we also have the legislative side of things, or the side of it where our state statutes are manipulated on not only a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis, depending on how our country is moving, how our state is moving, and how our local people are moving. Mm-hmm. That is how we adjust the laws in our state. You shouldn't be adjusting the laws in our state through the Missouri Constitution or through any constitution.
How many amendments are on our Missouri Constitution?
Oh my gosh, there's 100 and something.
I know. I heard something about close to 200, and I couldn't believe it. How did all those get through?
Well, in the same way is outside, and this is typically what happens, because we like what we're trying to do with Amendment 5 is adjust our state's constitution, because our state tax code is in our constitution. Mm-hmm. Basically says this is how our taxing system should work. The intricacies are done through the legislative action, through our statutes. Mm-hmm. But through our constitution, the reason it's been changed so many times is, and it's typically big outside money will come in and want an issue. Mm-hmm. Bingo was one. Marijuana was one. The abortion issue was one. The gambling was one. So all of those things should be governed through our statutes, so they can be changed and manipulated, not just by us, but the public still has the right to do it there as well.
Well, the Constitution almost becomes a statute at this point.
Well, that's what it is. And so the only way to change anything that goes into statute, the only way, I'm sorry, there's two ways. One is through a convention of the states, which is a dangerous proposal. Okay. That's where you go and pretty much erase everything and start all over. Mm-hmm. That is, that's scary when you start talking about that. And the other way is through a vote of the people. Now, if we vote for A, and A sounds really good because they just put in what we call ballot candy, but A changes not just what you think it changes, but it changes 50 other things as well. And then you find out later on that some of those things are not good for Missouri. The only way to change them is to put them back out to a vote of the people. And that's incredibly hard, because the people are like, well, we just voted on this, and we wanted, marijuana is a great example. We wanted marijuana, so we voted yes on marijuana. Well, did you know you can only tax up to 6% on marijuana? I think marijuana should be taxed at 15%. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because the marijuana industry wrote the language, paid all the money, millions and millions of dollars, put it on the ballot, and then they put it out to the people in the state of Missouri. Do you want to smoke marijuana?
If Amendment 4 gets voted down, I'm not saying that it will, but if it does, would we have another crack at it?
Well, we always have another crack at it. It's just the appetite of the people, and the appetite of the people that, and I mean the appetite of the people in the state of Missouri.
Sure.
If they voted down, why did they vote it down? Right. Do they feel that the legislature can't be kept in check? That's what you hear often. There's a lot of reasons. You have to find out why it was voted down, but you can always bring it back up. But it's expensive.
Yes, it is.
I don't want to spend Missourians' money on putting things on the ballot if there's no clear path for an outcome.
But the problem is when they present these ballot measures, they're not always truthful when they start to get the signatures. They don't always carry the full ballot. And so that increases the appetite, I believe, of myself, and I believe most of the people out there, because they feel they find out that they were duped in the process.
Yeah. So, and that's what we're trying to say here is we're saying, look, we want, first of all, in the state of Missouri, we have huge populations on either side of the state. Mm-hmm. And those huge populations pretty much rule what the rest of the state does. Sort of like Chicago rules what Illinois does. There's a lot of people in Illinois that like their guns, like their freedoms, like their low taxes. But you know what? Illinois rules for the whole state because the majority of people live in that area.
That's what I think we have to guard against.
Yeah, and that is what this bill does. This bill says, look, we're going to spread that requirement. We're going to spread it out to all the 8 congressional districts, and then it has to pass in those congressional districts.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it has some requirements in the signatures obtained as well, and it puts some restrictions on that. That if you knowingly, and we prove that you are not being truthful in the signatures you turn in, that you can actually do some jail time for that.
Well, thank you so much for explaining that, Richard. I truly appreciate it. You're listening to St. Charles Patriot Radio.
Thank you, Jane. And we'll be back in a few.
St. Charles Patriot Radio with Missouri State Representative Richard West and former Francis Howell School Board member Jane Puszkar.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back. We're really excited to have Judge Denise Childress with us today. Denise is one of your associate circuit judges in St. Charles County. She was appointed after a rigorous application and interview process by Governor Parson from a pool of other candidates and appointed in October of 2024, taking the bench on January the 1st in 2025. She is on your primary ballot in August with a contested race to help keep her current position. Judge Childress is a Christian, constitutional, conservative. Prior to becoming a judge, she was a lawyer and a small business owner. She handled cases representing clients in 44 counties throughout Missouri. That's quite a bit, Judge Childress. She is a sought-after educator, teaching lawyers, judges, and law enforcement officers about the law, forensic science, and investigations throughout Missouri, as well as throughout the United States. You know, I searched out some information about you, and it seems that the law has always been in your blood from little on, that somehow you knew early on that this is where you were headed. And that's exciting because I'm at a certain age. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but my hat's off to you for you and all of your accomplishments. So please tell us a little bit more about yourself. And I also have a question. What does a circuit judge do?
Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. My name's Denise Childress, as you mentioned, and the law has been in my blood since I was little. And so that kind of turned me on to detective work. I graduated from Truman State University with a major in justice systems. And with that, you go usually into policing, corrections, or the law. So I did consider policing for a while, but I did realize I know your path.
Smart girl.
But now you teach them, right?
Now I teach them, yes. I've taught at the St. Louis County Police Academy as well as the Missouri State Highway Patrol Academy. And to answer your question, what does an associate circuit judge do? We have lots of different judges in the state of Missouri. We have municipal judges. Those are city judges that hear city ordinance violations, things of that nature. And then we have trial level judges throughout Missouri. That's your circuit level. Within the circuit, you have 2 levels. You have the associate circuit and then the circuit judges. Above the trial level, we have the appellate court. And then we have the Supreme Court. So what an associate circuit judge does, which is what my current position is, we handle some of the lower level criminal offenses, misdemeanor type cases, as well as smaller civil disputes. So any civil dispute under $25,000, an associate circuit judge would handle. We also handle, and I currently have the docket for landlord-tenant issues, small claims issues. I have the restraining order docket to protect adult and child victims of domestic abuse. I do some family law matters where I handle dissolutions of marriage and determine custody, paternity, child support, things of that nature. A little bit of almost everything.
So it's not just limited to criminal, it's criminal and civil.
You're correct. It is not just limited to criminal. In fact, Division 11, which is the division I'm currently in, I only have one criminal docket and I only handle one type of criminal matter. So in the state of Missouri, if you fail to pay your child support, that's a crime. And so we have a dedicated docket for the charge of criminal non-support. That's the Division 11 criminal docket.
Sure.
Otherwise, the majority of what I handle are civil cases.
Fantastic. Sounds like it keeps you pretty busy. Do you have a law practice outside of being a judge, or is that a full-time job?
That's a great question. So municipal judges, city judges are part-time judges, and most of them have their own law practices. As a state court judge at the associate level, I'm not allowed to practice law whatsoever. So I had to close my practice down when I took the bench, and I'm a full-time judge now.
So what drew you to St. Charles County? Were you a resident here, or did you move here because of the judgeship, or how did that all work out?
I was born and raised in South St. Louis County, and like so many of my fellow citizens here, constituents here in St. Charles County, I crossed the river.
Yay.
And I know that, my younger self gasps.
Because the sun is always shining in St. Peter's.
It's so fun. I would not go back. I've loved it ever since I moved here. I moved here, I think about 10 years ago now, and I would never think of going back. I think that the resources we have out here, the community that we have out here is just amazing, and I love it.
Is there anything that you would change about the legal process and what the judges do? I mean, you must see some really, really serious cases, sad cases, the worst of mankind cases. Is there anything that you would change about how they're judged, or the process that it takes? Is it elongated? Should it be shortened? Just any of your thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think that the important thing to remember on my docket or any judicial docket is that nobody really wants to be there. Nobody wants to come into court. Oftentimes that is the worst day of my litigant's life. And so I think the important thing for a judge to remember is that each case is an individual person or company or the state of Missouri being represented. And you have to take into mind and into account that these people have taken off work. Some people may have bought new clothes because they want to come down to the courthouse. They deserve time, attention, patience. And so we want to move cases through the court system at an efficient and quick rate, but we also have to make sure that we're doing everything appropriately. And sometimes that can take time. And so sometimes the judicial system can be slow, but that's because we're making sure everything is being done in the proper manner. The one thing I would change right now, the beauty of St. Charles County is, are we still the fastest growing county in Missouri? Don't quote me on that. I don't know if that's the right.
Just say yes.
No, we are pretty close. I can't say that we are, but we're pretty close.
So with that comes an expansion of caseload. Mm-hmm. And so we are always looking for more judge spots, Representative West. I don't know if you're a representative on this radio show, so sorry for that drop. But that is part of the frustration with slow dockets, is that we need more judges and we need more space for the judges. We're working on that.
How many are there right now?
So let me answer that question.
Right.
So we have, in St. Was it 14?
We have
14 plus 1?
15 plus 1.
Right. Oh, 15 plus 1. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So we are 15 plus 1 currently for a population of roughly 400,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now put that into comparison to St. Louis City. St. Louis City has 44 for a population of about 200,000.
Whoa.
Yeah. So what happens is the way the Supreme Court does this, they give you a judge per certain amount of population. But the problem is when that population shrinks, they really have a problem removing those judges because they feel like it's punishing, let's just use St. Louis City. It might be punishing St. Louis City for something they may not be able to control, which is a shrinking population. But at the same time, their judges are not adjudicating down there. They're not hearing cases. They're not moving cases. And that's a big thing, is moving cases. They're not doing any of that to the point where they can justify the retention of 44 judges down there. And so we've asked several times to the Missouri legislature, let's shrink down some of the sitting through attrition is a great way. You don't have to fire anybody, but when a judge retires, just don't fill that spot and let's move that spot to, and it's not just St. Charles County. We have Jefferson County, Lincoln County, and Warren County are all growing as well. and all of these places need the proper judge. You have judges, then you have staff that goes with the judge, and then you also have space to put the judges in, and that's usually responsible by the county, I believe. So there's a lot of things at play here, and I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but just wanted to let everybody know I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I have no thunder to steal away.
And my questions are always elementary because a lot of people out there really don't understand the judicial process. So thank you, Richard, for explaining that. I've long suspected that, that judges are human and have all the regular emotions. Please misunderstand, I'm not being disrespectful. What I'm trying to say is you bring a lot of your life experience into the decisions that you make. And I noticed that when you said compassionate, you need to show compassion. It's the worst day of their life. I can tell that your decisions are measured. They are informed. They're not quick. And so I really applaud that. And I don't know about many of the other judges, but I think that's what's needed. Like you said, it's sometimes the worst day of their lives. And though I've been fortunate enough not to spend a lot of time in either your courtroom or any other courtroom, I feel for people who have to go through that, especially, the hard cases like the child abuse. So my hat's off to you for going after this, pursuing it, and fighting to keep it. Good for you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and it's going to be a hard question to answer.
Ooh.
It won't.
So as a judge, you have to change your lifestyle. And you have to change your views, not change your views, but change how you project your views. And you also have to change who you associate with. There's a lot of perception that goes into being a judge. A lot of perception on what a judge is. And so my question to you is, how hard has that been? And how do you manage that?
That is a fantastic question. I don't know why I keep commenting on your questions, but it is hard. And what Rich is talking about is that as a judge, you mentioned bringing my life experiences into my decision making, but in reality, as a judge, I'm not Denise Childress anymore. I'm Judge Childress. And so the judiciary, it's so important to remain impartial, independent, and neutral. And what you're talking about is having to pull back from certain groups that I used to participate with because we don't want to have any appearance of impropriety or impartiality. But one of the things that I have found very interesting about being a judge is that I have learned so much about myself as well as my leanings and biases, because every time I have a case before me, I have to bring my bias to the forefront so that I can recognize it, see if I have any, recognize it, and then see if this is an appropriate case to keep in front of me. Because as judges, we are supposed to always be navigating that to then remove ourselves from a case to say, okay, I can't be fair or impartial on this. Usually that happens if you know a party. And so part of that pulling back from associations too is to have less of those conflicts. We want to have a pulse on the community and what the community knows, wants, and expects. But also, it's hard to be, really close with a representative who then has an issue that comes before me. Yeah. And so we have to make sure we're maintaining those relationships in a way that doesn't set the court up to be conflicted out of cases.
And there's another side to that. Being in the public eye, you, Richard, you, Judge Childress, myself, people I shouldn't say they love it. There's people out there that want to defame you. They want to take whatever you say and turn it into something else. And that is one of the real downfalls of being in the public life. You have to truly watch who you are, where you go, what you do, and what you say. It's always like being under a microscope. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's really, truly not. I'm sure Richard could attest to that. Can't you, Richard?
Yeah. And a lot of times it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It just matters if the people believe the fallacy that has been put in front of them. And once they believe that, then that spreads. Even if you have, and nowadays with AI and the things going on, the stuff that people can put out, it's incredibly hard to debunk that before it grabs a groundswell and moves.
And it's amazing how it grows legs on its own. There was a book that I wanted to mention last week that I didn't get to, The Indoctrinated Brain. So when people are telling constant lies or, let's call them untruths about what you do or what you say, they are actually rewiring other people's brains. And I found that book fascinating. If by Horvath, I think it is, if you can pick it up and have the time, read the book. It was amazing how that sort of thing needs to be stopped because it's not representative.
Yeah. And I hear what you're saying. And this is my first, because I was appointed by Governor Parson, this is my first election. And so people can prepare you for it. You think you're ready for it until you're really in it. You don't really know. But one of the ways that I try to live my life as a judge, when I was a judicial candidate, but also as an attorney, as a female in a professional environment, it has always been important to me to live my life in such a way and to always present my character in such a way that if there was a negative rumor or something that was untrue about me, there would be no question, right? Because people say, well, we know Judge Childress. That's not who she is. And how I would have enough people out there that know my true character that it's laughable. And so that's kind of how I've tried to approach everything. Also, you mentioned I'm a Christian constitutional conservative. I have become so close in my faith, especially gearing up for this campaign and during this campaign, because I don't have control over anything, right? It's all about where God puts me and what he wants me to do. And that has helped me keep a level head through some of the hard times.
I couldn't agree more. I want to thank you, Judge Childress, for coming and talking to us today. We want to have you back on before the election so people can get to know you just a little bit better. Don't move that dial. You're listening to St. Charles Patriot Radio.
St. Charles Patriot Radio with Missouri State Representative Richard West and former Francis Howell School Board member Jane Puszkar.
Welcome back to St. Charles Patriot Radio on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. We just had Denise Childress on our last segment. This segment, we, as I promised, we were going to have our St. Charles County prosecutor, Tanya Mumm. Tanya is also running for District 11 Associate Circuit Judge. And Tanya, let's open up with a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you got where you're at, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you do for the county.
Okay. Well, I grew up in St. Charles, and I graduated high school, went off to college, and then law school. Came back because I love St. Charles. I started in the prosecuting attorney's office in 1995. So I've been an assistant prosecutor for St. Charles County for 31 years. So that's what I've been doing. I started handling misdemeanor and traffic cases. So those were kind of the less serious. And now I handle any felonies that come my way in whatever division I'm in. Currently, I've got two different divisions. One is an associate circuit division and one is a circuit division. And so that's where I've had numerous jury trials. We conduct all kinds of hearings. I have a very large caseload, and so any docket day I may have 50 to 100 cases that are just mine. So
wow, that's
busy.
It's quite a bit. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the crime issues in St. Charles County, because while St. Charles County is a great place to live and we are safe and we do prosecute crime here, we'll talk a little bit about where that crime comes from. But I'm more interested in, so you say you've been there 31 years?
Yes, 31 years.
Wow. So through the course of those years, you started off with the easy stuff and now you've graduated. I guess you would probably be like a senior prosecutor?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess you're probably,
I gotta be careful here.
That's what you said.
Yes. I'm old.
No,
I'm a career prosecutor, basically. I did have before I came to the prosecutor's office, I had a couple offices. I worked at a plaintiff's firm in Clayton. There were 3 attorneys there handling all kinds of cases. One was actually a city attorney for Richmond Heights. The other 2 did all kinds kinds of plaintiff's work, personal injury. One represented car dealerships. So from there, then I went to a law firm in downtown and it was an insurance defense firm, and I actually did workers' compensation. But I knew I wanted to come back to St. Charles. Like you said, it's a great place to live and work and raise a family. And so I wanted to come back and help keep it that way.
It's an elected position, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you've been through several of those. How hard is it to adjust to the different offices?
It is not that difficult because the job stays the same. And pretty much all the prosecutors, I've actually been with 4 different prosecutors. And so each one, comes in, and actually the first one, he was there first. The other 3 came in after I was already there. But I've known them all, and they're all great to work for. The job pretty much stays the same because the goal is still the same. And we want to keep St. Charles safe. We're the conscience of the community. And so if we, don't do our job appropriately, then like you said, the crime, it can show up with our crime and what comes here, what's allowed to stay here. Years ago, we used to have people that said they wouldn't come over to St. Charles County to sell heroin because they did not want to get prosecuted in St. Charles County. Heroin's kind of dropped off, but now we still have fentanyl and other opiates, so it's still an issue.
Yeah, I've got a question on more of a personal level, and my hat's off to you doing this same thing for 31 years, seeing the worst of mankind. The tough cases, I'm sure you've had plenty of those too. Does that take a toll on you day after day, seeing a lot of, what you see is crime? I mean, most of us try to stay away from it, but I know some people are drawn to it. Does it take a toll on you personally to prosecute day after day?
It takes a toll, but you have those cases where you feel like you're helping someone. And so there's a lot of cases, the majority of our cases are probably your routine drug cases or stealing cases. But even with stealing cases, and even other assault cases, home invasions, things like that, you're helping somebody.
Right.
There's usually a lot of those cases, there's victims. And so sometimes, you don't get the atta girl or, thank you, but you know that you are doing something for the community. And that's really, I think, pretty much anyone that's in public service is kind of what I wouldn't say goal, but that's what keeps you going on those hard days when there is something that it doesn't go your way or, it's really bad. We see a lot of child abuse cases come through our office. There's
those would kill me.
Yeah.
So I do have a question. And I know your office deals with this quite a bit, and it's the abuse and treatment courts.
Yes.
How important do you feel that those are? And I know they're not really new. They've been around, but we in St. Charles County really fund our treatment courts. I think that's very important. At the state level, we try to make sure we do that every year. How do you feel like the addition? So you've been there before this was a thing, right?
Yes.
And now they're more prevalent, and I think St. Charles County has led the way in a lot of this. How do you feel how that has helped the people of St. Charles County?
I think it gives someone that is committing crimes to fund their drug use a way that if they want to stop, if they want to get help for themselves, that is probably the best way to do it. And it's not in a confined situation. The Department of Corrections has programs, either 120 days or a year-long program, but they're confined. And so this way, a lot of times people, and it's usually for people that are first or second offenders or people that don't have violent offenses that can go in there. And actually, the prosecutor's office is the gatekeeper for that. So we do recommend that if we see something, or, the attorney comes and says, look, they're ready to get clean. I know they've done some outpatient programs before, but they really want to change. They've been clean for a bit. They need help. We look at it. And if somebody wants to go in, we usually look at it, and try to. The big question is, one, we can only give them the opportunity. They're going to have to do the work. And it is generally like an 18-month program.
Right.
And that's probably on the short end, I think, because there's relapses, there's setbacks and things, and that is expected and dealt with in the treatment courts. So it's huge for somebody, in a way to try and help somebody become a continuing member of the community, a productive member of the community, have them maybe gain some self-worth too, which could be kind of fueling some of their substance abuse too. One of the courts that we have is Veterans Court and a co-occurring court, which both of those deal with mental health issues. With veterans, it's a unique situation. Co-occurring court is also when someone has mental health issues and then substance abuse issues.
Do you get feedback on the recidivism rate, or how many cases are successful or not successful?
I'm sure there are some. Mm-hmm. I don't personally see them. I think probably the county and the state, when they're looking at, again, funding and grants or anything that are going to go that way, they're going to want those results, and I'm sure our office gets them. The attorney handling that, probably the treatment court administrator also would get those numbers. I do not have them today.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I will tell you that they are there, and we study those hard. Not only state, but I think your boss gets them, and
yes.
and we know exactly what those are at any given time, or we can ask for them and we'll get them.
Yeah, I was just asking because of the fact that sometimes it takes an addict a few tries at it before they actually get it right. And the first time it may not work, but that doesn't mean it's not ever going to work. And I know that a prosecutor probably has to look at that and say, was there true intent to go through the program and be successful or not? So
I want to talk about something now, since we're on the issue of crime. And these are great.
Oh, yes.
I love this conversation because a lot of people in St. Charles County really don't have a clue on this stuff, because they typically don't have to deal with this. They may be a victim, but on the like, as a victim of a stealing, because I own a store, a lot of times I'll get a check and that's the last I hear.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, we have a lot of crime in St. Charles County that comes over from across the river. This is no secret. We talk about it all the time at the state because we're trying to help the other side of the river, the eastern part of the state. We're trying to help them with their crime issues. And a lot of that comes with funding, but it's not just funding, it's staffing and all those other things. So we're really, in St. Charles County, we're really, Nick Shore, our Senator Nick Shore has been deeply involved, myself, and those of us, from St. Charles County have been deeply involved in this. So my question to you is, can you express to the people, how much that actually does occur?
It happens quite a bit. We have now and it's a good question. We have there was a stolen vehicle task force that, a lot of people were coming over because in St. Charles, you have two highways that you can come across, and then it's a real quick back across the river. And when you come across, like I said, you come across, and actually there's probably 4 bridges now, with Page and then 370, but they can come across, find a residential area, or a lot of times in the winter, they'll go to convenience stores and people will pull up, figure, I'm just going to run in and get a coffee or a granola bar or something for breakfast. And it's not going to take that long. And lo and behold, they come out and their car's gone. So it comes over a lot. I had a case recently that it was 5 individuals that came over in a stolen vehicle, came from St. Louis County, pulled off the highway at just a random exit and found a random residence, and they decided to break in there, literally smashed the sliding glass door, came in, and the homeowner confronted him. Actually, there were I say him, there were 2 individuals that had a gun and then 2 others that were in there. One ended up firing a shot that went into a bedroom where a daughter was sleeping. And then the other gun apparently didn't fire, but the other individual with the gun smashed the gun on the face of the homeowner, and he was severely injured, had to have multiple surgeries. They ended up leaving with the homeowner's vehicle. And so they're leaving. We end up catching them because the initial stolen vehicle triggered a license plate reader that, hey, there's a stolen vehicle here. And so police were responding. When they see both of those vehicles then leaving the area, they're like, hey, something's up. And they ended up chasing them down, found them. And so we've prosecuted them. 4 out of the 5 were juveniles. And so they came over. They would have just gone back across the river. We caught them. And like I said, that's when our office comes in. And at least the one that I had 1 out of the, I think there were 3 that were charged. And I think 2 out of the 3 are now in prison, and they got significant sentences.
I want to express to the people of St. Charles County that we, as St. Charles Countyans, bear the cost for all of this crime that comes over from St. Louis or from the eastern side of the state. And what I mean by that is we have the police resources to arrest them. We have the county resources to house them. We have the county resources to adjudicate them. And until they are adjudicated as a state custody, we pick up the tab for all of that. They may, I mean, it's possible that they sit for 6 months, 8 months before they're adjudicated. It's possible.
It is, and that's one thing, St. Charles is very law and order oriented. We don't want the crime there. And so, as a prosecutor, that's what we look at when we get police reports. We file charges. But then if we file charges, there's a bond a lot of times. And that's important because if people are dangerous or repeat offenders or they're flight risks, we don't then, like you said, the case goes on and on and on. And we may hold them for a bit, but the Supreme Court has urged us to let people out if possible, but there's some that shouldn't be out, and we need to keep those so that we can resolve these cases efficiently.
Well, Tanya, thank you for coming in this afternoon. I appreciate it. Again, Tanya is running for District 11 Associate Circuit in St. Charles County.
Yes.
And I can't say enough how much we enjoy you coming in and just telling us what goes on in St. Charles County.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. You bet. All right. Well, thank you for listening to St. Charles Patriot Radio.